Listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very happy to have Mr. Jamal Jivanjee here with me, life coach. And we're going to get to know him and just have a great conversation. And Jamal, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much for the invitation to be on your show.
Thank you.
I'm always honored to come on people's shows. I know how much work it takes and intentionality it takes to create content that's helpful to people, and so I don't take that lightly. So I really appreciate you reaching out. It's an honor to be here. And we were just chatting a little bit before we got on air here. I live in Southern California, a little mountain community, just about an hour and a half east of Los Angeles. I'm originally from Ohio. I'm married. I have one daughter. She's all grown up. And she has children, so that makes me a grandfather.
Man, welcome to the club.
Thank you. It's fantastic. I am a life coach by profession. I've been doing that for the last several years. Also an author and podcaster.
And so what's the name of the book that you wrote?
My most recent book is called Living for a Living. Came out in 2019. And really the heart of that book is about, to kind of backtrack a little bit. One of my pet peeves is people would ask me all the time, and they'd say, "Hey, what is it you do for a living?" And because of my background and where, the way I grew up, I'm originally from Ohio, my dad is an immigrant, came to the United States in his adult years, came from a very impoverished country. My mother is originally from Ohio, southeastern Ohio, grew up kind of in the country. She's a kind of a country girl by heart, but comes from a lot of generational poverty, a lot of hardship on her side. So I got those two perspectives from my mother and father's side. Just a lot of, in my house, it was all about, you work hard to just survive.
Mm-hmm.
Any kind of like what you want to do with your life is almost a luxury you couldn't afford to do. You just do what you have to do. That's how I grew up. And so that question, what do you do for a living, always bothered me because I didn't understand that there's a difference between living and surviving. I thought survival was all there is, but that didn't feel like living to me. And so it set me on a trajectory to discover, is there more to life than just making it? Is there more to life than just surviving? And so the book Living for a Living is really about my journey out of working for survival to working because it's in alignment with who I am as an entity, as a being. And so that's what the aim of the book is about.
Now, one thing that I try to get from all the life coaches that do come on my show, what are the things that set you apart from the others, and kind of want to get to know some of the things you have in common?
Great question. Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I like to tell people, when people talk about life coaching, it's one of those things, right? So it's a completely unregulated industry. Mm-hmm. Meaning if you talk to 10 people, 10 life coaches about what is a life coach, you might get 10 different answers, because there's just, depends on where you're coming from, what your perspective is. So I can only really speak for myself when it comes to my process or what my aim is. But when I like to say life coaching, what is life, right? So I come back to what really our identity. Who are we? How do we answer that question? And most of us have been programmed, right? Whether we're conscious of it or not, we've been programmed through an entire set of metrics, going back to our childhood, going back to even before we were conscious. This programming largely comes from our parents, mother and father. Which they're influenced by their dynamics, their family structures, their culture, whatever it may be. And then when we come into the world, we learn how to see first and foremost ourself through their lens. So it's not our construct of self is not even ours. We didn't create it. It's given to us. And so when that construct of self is not in alignment with what I would call the truth of who we are, then we suffer. And suffering is actually an indicator. It's kind of like on your car, if you're driving your car and a warning light comes on, it's an indicator that lets you know something's off here. Something's not in alignment. So when we suffer, it's an indicator that we're not in alignment with the truth of who we are. That's been my experience. And so with life coaching, what I employ is I always say, okay, how are we going to become aware of what's happening here? So our senses, our eyes, our ears, all the senses that we are trained to interact with the world through, they're all externally focused. So we're never going to find the solution through an external focus, even though we're trying really hard. That's the way we've been trying. If I don't have enough money, what do you do? To figure out how to go get more money. Or if I don't feel loved, what are you going to do? Go out and find another person, or find that one relationship that's going to fix it all for you, or, whatever it may be. It's the external focuses. And you can only do that for so long before you realize that this becomes like a repetitive process. It's like a broken record. It's like, same story, different day. We may change out relationships, change out jobs, but the similar themes, they just keep showing up and they keep repeating. And so in order to really get a handle on that, we have to pivot. We have to pivot our gaze from the external to the internal. So a lot of the process that I do in my coaching work is really taking a person and pivoting their gaze inward. And we look at our quote unquote psychological structure, which we don't see, right? It's the lens through which we're viewing everything through, right? So we may see the universe, we may interact with the universe, but what we see is being colored through that lens. We don't see the lens that we're seeing everything through. So the coaching that I do is really about turning inward to take a look at that lens and then realize what created it, what shaped it, and then create some distance between ourself and that lens, because that's where we begin to awaken.
Now, from your perspective, when you deal with people who genuinely want to change, but somehow they seem scared to change, why is that?
That's another great question. There's fear in letting go, right? Because what happens is, and this may not even be conscious, what we're asking people to do is to let go of who you think you are, the essence of how you perceive yourself. So there's comfort in the familiar. There's a lot of comfort in the patterns, right? We may not like the pattern. They may not be pleasant, but at least we know what it is. So first human need that drives all human beings is the need for certainty. And that's the way the mind interacts with certainty. Is the mind has to figure everything out. What's happening? How does this work? So it wants to know all the answers to all the questions. That's how it gets certainty. It doesn't actually give you certainty, but that the mind thinks it can get there, right? So it's, you want to hang on to these concepts and ideas and try to figure everything out. Well, certainty is actually an energetic state of being. It's a feeling of being safe. It's a feeling of being grounded, And I always like to tell people, like, you don't actually need to know anything to be safe, to feel safe. Look, for example, a newborn baby. Newborn baby can be born in the world, and as long as they're, fed and loved and held, they can feel really safe. They can feel really grounded. So certainty is an important thing. It's an essential human need that we all have. But when we've learned to attach, right, we've learned, and this is the problem, is that we've become so identified with our construct of who we think we are. So when that construct causes problems, and then we take a look at it, we say, hey, that's not actually true of who you are. So then we want to let go. The encouragement is, I always encourage people, there's a process of letting go of who you think you are. That can feel like a loss. It's actually a death of some sorts. And we are terrified by death. But I always say, every death is a birth. Every birth is a death in some sorts. So every birth is a death of a former way of being. Even think about the baby coming into the world. When a baby is coming out of the womb and into the world, that previous life, everything that baby knew, being in that womb, the comfort, the security, it's gone. And you lose that. And that we all go through that in this process of letting go. I remember, and it's not always an overnight thing. Sometimes it's a process of letting go. It can be really terrifying, but that's why there's fear in that, you know?
So that fear, is that why people sabotage themselves?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So self-sabotage, such a common, a lot of times people sabotage. Yeah. So it is to get back to, I look at the subconscious mind as, so we have a conscious mind, we have a subconscious mind. Conscious mind has contrary to popular belief, the conscious, what we know consciously, intellectually, has very little to do with how we live or how we feel about our life. And I say this often. I always say the life that you have is the, your life is that you're living is actually more congruent to how you feel than what you know to be true. And how you feel in life is largely a result of your subconscious or unconscious programming. So that's the stuff we don't know that we don't know. It's the unconscious programming. So the self-sabotage comes in when the subconscious programming has not shifted. So I look at it as a thermostat, right? So if you set your thermostat in your house to 72, for example, well, you could as soon as that temperature goes up to 71, 70, it's fine. But as soon as you hit 72, there's a ceiling. You get to 73, then the thermostat's going to kick on the AC to bring the temperature back down to 72. So at our subconscious programming, and we may want to break some patterns and, you know, get out of a rut we're in and really hit some new benchmarks in life. That's great. And as soon as we start doing that, if the subconscious hasn't been altered, then what happens in the subconscious programming, it's like a thermostat. It's set at a certain, as soon as you start to heat up your life and get moving and that great things are happening, the thermostat will say, oh, we're exceeding the limit. We need to bring you back down to what you know, which is you don't get past the 72-degree mark. So we're going to bring you down. So if you start making too much money, if it's more than what you've been programmed, well, we got to create some actions that are going to bring you back to the familiar, because we feel uncertain now, because 72 is certainty and you're at 78. We've never been here before. This is not safe. So it brings you back. So that's where self-sabotage comes in, because we wouldn't consciously do it. I don't know anybody that would consciously sabotage themselves, but subconsciously it happens all the time, because it's, again, the subconscious is running the show.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've done that in the past. It seems like a relationship starts going well, and then I do something stupid to screw it all up. Thank God I broke out of that pattern.
I totally understand that story of my life.
Now, do you deal with people that are into substance abuse?
Oh yeah, it's very common, and I feel like it's probably more common these days than it has been ever before. But people who struggle with substance abuse, what I've understood, my perception is they're actually probably more hungry for change than most people, because they're actively searching for better. They're trying to get somewhere. Yeah. So I always say, where are you trying to get to? It's like, well, I want some relief. I'm just trying to get to a place where I'm not feeling this pain, or I'm really, we want to experience peace, and we want to experience joy, and we want to experience connection. So that's the aim. The substance is just the means to the end. It's not the end in itself. It doesn't get you there in a sustainable way. But the aim is the goal. The person going to church every Sunday and the person, that's strung out on, some substance, it's actually have the same goal. They want to get to heaven. And that, by heaven, I mean a cessation of suffering, a place where we're loved, where we're connected. It's the same goal. So I say, okay, it's just the mechanism, the metrics in which we're trying to get there. It's not working, but the goal is legitimate. And a lot of folks who struggle with addiction aren't aware of that.
Yeah. Dealt with that for a long time too. It's first it was for fun, then it got to be a habit, And I understand what you mean when you're used to, I'll use for this, for example, when I'd go barbecue, I had to have a drink in my hand. And then I found when I quit drinking, I didn't barbecue as much anymore. There was a comfort in having that in my hand for some reason. And that's what I knew. Or watching the ball game, you know, Friday night, as soon as you get off work. That's what I mean, it was just, let's go to the refrigerator, grab a beer, or, go to the liquor store and buy a bottle, or what have you. Uh, I hated myself and did everything I could to destroy myself. Um, there's got to be more to it than just what you were talking about. I mean, when there's, I don't know, some kind of abuse, whether it be physically, mentally, what have you, um, how do you help people get past those problems?
Yeah, another great question. Well, in so let me back up a little bit. So we have, I would say, to a human being, there's really three components to us, to our physical nature, right? So we have a physical body, we have a mental body, and then we have an energy body. So physical body, what is a physical body? Well, a physical body, literally, all of our bodies are about 37 trillion cells. That's really the average human body, 37 trillion cells put together. And so the cells are literally, little energy units, but they're metabolized food. If get very simplistic here, I mean, to boil it down in a very simplistic form, when you eat food, when you're a baby, your body's small, you come out, you start to eat, then you metabolize that food, your body's growing into your genetic structure that's there, and you just start metabolizing food and the cells multiply. That's just really what the physical body is. But in the physical body, when you see somebody's physical body, you're seeing the past, because it's literally the accumulation of the food they've eaten and it's been metabolized. Well, there's another side to that coin. So I look at the physical body as like a coin. You have heads and tails, right? Heads is the physical body. The tails side of it is what we would call the mental body. It's when people refer to the mind, but it's a mental body. And we know from science that the mental body, memories and associations and imprints and all kinds of things are stored at a neurological level, right? So in our brain, but those nerves don't just stay in the brain. They run through every aspect of our body. So physical body and mental body is intertwined. The mental body is made up of memory. It's the past as well, past experiences, past beliefs, past just, there's generational things, even very subtle, what's considered, some people call it articulate and inarticulate memory. Very, very, a lot of different dimensions of memory at play, a lot of which are unconscious, but that's what makes up our mental body. So when somebody experiences abuse or anything from the past, it gets stored. The records of that get stored at the body mind level. So the body and the mind, and so I one of the fundamental things that we do in coaching, first and foremost, is to start to create a little bit of a gap, right, between your consciousness and your body and your mind. They're not the same thing. Body and the mind, they're like tools. Like if you're a carpenter, you have a tool belt, you have tools on your belt, you have these tools and you use them when you need them. Well, I always say the body and the mind were actually given to humans as tools. The problem is that we have become so identified with them. So our idea of who we are is my body. I point to my body, right? This is me. It's actually not me. It's just, the body is in flux constantly. So I say, when someone says, "Oh, if you're your body," I like to say, "Well, which body are you?" Because if you pull out a picture of yourself at 5 years old and you look at a child picture of yourself and you go, where's that person today? You cannot find that body. If you would call the police and say, "Hey, you got a missing person," you give them pictures, they could look all over the planet. They'll never find that body because that body's gone. The body died a long time ago. We're not aware of it because it's a subtle process. The cells are constantly dying and being rebirthed constantly so that you don't see, but the body, by the time you're 50, you've had many bodies. Every 7 years or so, the body completely regenerates itself. There's not one cell in your body today that was present at birth. So we can't be our body. which body would we be? So there's something more to who we are than just this physical body. I think we kind of know that, but we're so identified with this. But the same thing's the truth of our mind, right? If you could go back to your 5-year-old mind, it'd be very different than the mind you have today, because you have different perceptions, different experiences. Maybe your beliefs have changed. So our mind can be altered. It can be changed, it can be erased. God forbid that we get into an accident or have some damage to the brain. It happens. So we're not our mind either. And when we're attached to the body or the mind, it's a very unstable place. That's why we feel anxious. We feel not settled, especially if there's trauma, then it's really not safe to be us. So people who have experienced a lot of trauma in their background, they're trying to get away from themselves because it doesn't feel safe. This isn't conscious. It's an unconscious. It feels very like traumatic to be me. So the solution and the healing begins to happen when we realize, oh, the body and the mind are just the past, right? It's just, they're just the past. They're accumulation of the past. It's not who I am. So when we begin to unplug or create distance from the body mind, we begin to become profoundly present. It's natural. You don't actually have to be present. All of us are already present. There's nowhere else to be. Life only exists in this moment. So the past is actually not anywhere to be found. As traumatic as it may be, it's gone. It's like that body from the past is not there. We have the records of it stored, yes, in the body-mind construct, but it's actually not there now in existence. So when you start to create a gap or distance between the body-mind, what's natural is you start to relax and you start to feel more safe. You start to settle into this moment. Why is that? Well, it's because this moment is always peaceful. Life is peaceful in this moment. And every time we come back to this moment, we realize I always say problems don't exist in this moment. They exist in our perception of the future, which doesn't exist. There is no future. The future is literally a construct of the mind. You'll never experience the future in the future. Everything you experience is always in this moment. So the future exists in the mind, and that terrorizes us. A lot of suffering coming from our perceptions of the future. So, but where are we getting this perception of the future? Where's it coming from? Well, it's coming from the past. That's all we have. The brain, all it can do is take past experiences. And if the past has been traumatic or unsettled in some way, then what we do is there's this projection of this, that's what the future is going to be like. And then we start to brace ourselves. But if you can unplug from that psychological time, so to speak, and just settle into this moment and analyze this moment, feel this moment, there's no problems. Everything's actually fine right now. So it's that's how some people will try to change the body mind construct, and that's important. Eventually you can reprogram. I always say your body is actually being recreated this moment. So we're actually recreating the body mind in the present tense. But the reason most people don't create anything new at the level of body and mind is because when we're attached to the past and we're in resistance to the past, especially if there's trauma, there's a principle here: what you resist persists. So when you're in resistance, that's where the focus is. It's in the past. Well, if that's where the focus is, that's all you can create. Where focus goes, energy flows. So we tend to recreate these patterns. That's why it's like, different day, but same story. We tend to just recycle these patterns as if, then we say, well, why does this keep happening to me? And it's not because life is doing it. It's because we're actually we're creators by nature. All humans are creators. So creating that gap and that distance between the past and learning to become profoundly present is how we begin to create the future the way we want it to be created. Because this moment, I can draw from the past to create the future, or I can draw from this moment. So I've learned to say, I want to draw from this moment, because in this moment, there's infinite possibilities. The future can be anything if I'm drawing from this moment. Because again, if we draw from the past is limited, right? I can only create what I've experienced. Sure. So that's the key to actually creating a life that breaks out of the past, is when I stop drawing from the past as my reservoir to create the future. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of the.
Oh yeah, makes more sense than you realize. It's see, there's something different that I haven't heard from anybody else before. In your methods, do you ever use things like EFT?
I know people that have. I personally, go a little bit of a different route. I'm a fan of a lot of the different, techniques that are out there to, to release trauma, release energy from the body.
Mhm.
Tapping. There's all kinds of things, and I employ some of those things. But I mainly as far as modalities go, there is a process, and again, it's not an overnight process, but really turning people inward through breath work, through meditation, yoga. And again, yoga is a loaded word because I think when you say that, depending on a person's background or perspective, that could mean exercise, stretches, it could mean lots of things. But really the word yoga means union. It's really what it means. It's to yoga means yoke, but it's actually an agricultural term. So, when you would have like oxen that would pull something in the old days, the thing on their neck was called a yoke. And so you would put that on and they would get hitched to something and pull. So it's the idea of being hitched. Well, that's what yoke means. Well, yoga and yoke are very similar words. So the idea of yoga is when you're yoked to your internal nature, when you are attached and identified with your essence and your being, that's the ultimate state of non-suffering. That's really what it feels like to be home, to be home in your own skin. So yoga is the process of inner union. And it's not actually much different than, so, I don't know what your spiritual background is, but Jesus made a statement one time, it's recorded in the New Testament, but he said, if you're really tired and weighed down and heavy, learn from me because let me teach you my ways, learn from me because my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And that word yoke is actually the same word for yoga. The inner union is easy and light. And so I always tell people, when we experience life without internal resistance, life feels light and easy. But whenever what is stress? People talk about stress. Well, what is it? Well, stress is simply just resistance, right? I'm resisting internally the way life is. And that is stress, right? So there's a reason we're in resistance. If we're in trauma, the fight or flight mechanism, when we're in trauma, that's resistance. Now it doesn't feel safe. So I got to have my guard up. I got to be in resistance. Well, that's what's happening at the body and mind level. So the goal in coaching, the coaching I employ is we want to begin immediately to reduce resistance. And there's ways to do that. So I employ, some of the breath work and yogic practices. What they help do is turn off in the body the fight or flight mechanism so that we can become less resistive to life. And once that happens, then we start to gain some energy, right? Energy starts to come back into the system, because resistance is like working out. You can only do it for so long. Then you get, you're exhausted after a while. So
yeah, that ain't no lie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever come across a client that there was like no hope for them whatsoever? They resisted everything, and you finally is like, I have to just walk away from this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's happened. But I don't look at it as a negative thing. I know it can seem that way. I look at the way I view it is it's all about timing. It's all about timing. For me, I have a hard head. It took years for me to be ready. Most people are not going to be willing to make changes in their life until, I always say, on the balance sheet, right? We have this balance sheet. Is it costing me more than I'm getting from a certain behavior? I mean, if the payoff at one point, the reason we do things is because there's a payoff, right? It feels like, okay, this is benefiting me in some way, so we keep doing it. Well, if I can perceive that this behavior, this action is actually costing me more, if it actually feels that way, I'll be ready to make a change, because we'll always trade up. We never, it's not in human nature to trade down, even though we might be doing that. That's not how we perceive it. Otherwise we wouldn't do it. So for me, it took a long time for me to be willing to let go of who I thought I was, what I thought my life should be. Until but when the suffering got too much, when I got to the point where I got desperate, I was like, I don't care. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep living this way. I'm not, it's not sustainable. And at that point, I was open. There was an openness and a willingness for me. So then when I got help, it was, I'll do whatever. You tell me, I'll do it. I'm not in the position to challenge, So when I'm working with somebody, and if there's some pushback and resistance even to the coaching, I say, okay, not a problem. It's not a problem. Let's get clear about why. Where's this resistance coming from? And it's usually coming from a place, and we'll address that. So because the last thing I want to do is I don't want anybody to do things out of obligation or a sense of this is what I have to do, because that doesn't lead to transformation.
It's true.
Human beings I always say we are created to be free. Freedom is the ultimate state of humanity. So we're not going to do anything because we're told to do it or because we feel like we have to. We need to do it because it's our sovereign choice. And I want to honor that, because that's what we're here for, is to be sovereign and to be free. And I always tell people, if we can't figure out where the resistance is coming from, it's okay. It's totally fine. It just means it's not the right time. So if you're arguing to maintain your way of living, I would say if you think it's working for you and you're okay with it, keep doing it.
Why did you come to me in the first place, right?
Totally. Yeah. And that's just because it's too scary at this point to let go. And they may even be, and I've actually had people say, I know I need to let go of this. I can't, I'm not ready. Like, okay, it's honest. I respect that. I was like, and in time you will be, at some point you will be, and that's okay. Let's just revisit it when that time is right. And just that pressure being taken off is so helpful for folks. And I've had people come back to me 6 months, a year later. I'm ready.
That's pretty sweet. I mean, when it was time for me to give up the drugs and the alcohol, it was because I was ready to let go.
Yep.
Otherwise, I wasn't going to. No, don't care what you said to me. I don't care if my life depended on it. It was when I finally said, you know what, it's not working out. I need to move on.
That's right.
Excuse me. So on top of that, you ever use hypnosis?
I personally don't use that in my practice, but I know people that do and have great success at it. So interesting, hypnosis is a way to break into the unconscious mind, right? Mm-hmm. It's a way to change the unconscious programming. There are some modalities I use that do that. It's not the traditional hypnotic way of, but this is, there are some modalities that I use that really get into through a repetitive modality. It's a practice we do, certain practice that you do for a number of weeks in the work. And then basically you're just rewriting a subconscious belief system. So a belief, what is a belief? A belief is simply, I always say a belief is simply a repetitive thought, right? That it's just a thought that you've thought about over and over, and to the point where you don't really think about it anymore. It becomes part of the subconscious register, And this could be anything. Let's say somebody told you something about yourself and you kept hearing it growing up over and over. You're just so something, you're just lazy, and you heard that over and over from a parent. And then eventually you hear it enough, you think about it enough, it becomes a subconscious script, belief, and you don't have to think about it after a while. It's just there. It's always there running the show. So, those are fairly straightforward to change. Hypnosis is one way to do it. It's a quick way, but it's not sustainable in the sense that you can change the belief structure. It's not an end all be all, because the structure itself still remains. So the only way to actually experience liberation from the structure is to go beyond it, is to transcend it. So when you transcend it, your psychological structure, some people call it the ego, right? who you are, when you, by coming into the essence of who you are, that is not based upon any belief. It's not based upon any experience. It's simply who you are at the level of existence. So as we begin to tap into that part of ourself and just get to know that part of ourself and experience that part of ourself, we then have the ability to rewrite the unconscious and conscious scripts that are running our life. And so that's why I prefer to what I would call the spiritual process. What I mean by spiritual, that can be a loaded word for a lot of people based upon your background. When I say spiritual, all I mean is beyond the physical, right? So that's what spirit means, beyond physical. There's no real borders, right? So I always say we are actually spiritual beings having a physical experience here in life. And it's important to get that we can't get that out of order. The way we've been programmed is that we are physical beings, maybe have a spiritual dynamic here, but we're really primarily physical beings. But this is actually not the case. Who we are at the core of our being is immaterial. It's the spiritual in nature that even gives the physical expression. Without the spiritual component, you don't even have physical life. You can't have it because everything's energy. We know this even from our understandings of quantum mechanics. Oh, yeah. The entire universe is actually coming from a location or a dimension, I should say. That dimension is called the quantum field, which is it is invisible. It is no place. It is no thing. When I say nothing, it's actually two words, no thing. No, it's not physical in nature, but all the energy in the universe is coming from this invisible, formless dimension. And that's actually the source of our own existence, that formless state, which is called the quantum field, but it's pure energy. So we possess that. That's actually in us. Mm-hmm. So going to the source of all creation is actually, it's not going out, right? And many times in a lot of religious practice, right, we have to find God out there somewhere. But that's not we're just looking in the wrong place, right? Because you can't find God out there anywhere, or the source, or whatever you want to call it, out there. It's actually within. So there's a dimension within. Even Jesus would talk about this. He said the kingdom of heaven is within you. And he said that, and people didn't really catch on to that. Just because it's seemingly the last place we want to look. Why? Because all our senses are focused out here, right? But it's within us. It's at the love. Everything you experience, though, if you experience love, you experience joy, if you experience peace, I like to ask people, where is that? We may think it's because of that person over here, right? Especially if I'm in love, it's that person, right? It's out there, but you experience it within you. It's still in you. I remember I had a lady one time who was suicidal. She wanted to end her life, and I said, "Why do you want to do this?" And she said, "Because nobody loves me." I said, "Okay." I said, "How do you know this?" She's like, "What do you mean? How do I know?" She's like, "No one loves me. No one cares about me. No one. If I could drop off the earth, no one would call me. No one would even think about me." I said, "Okay." I said, "So how do you know that you're in love?" I said, "You must have had a reference point, right? Because the only way to know you're unloved means you know what it means to be loved. At some level, you have an idea to compare it. Otherwise, then you can say, "Oh, I don't feel that way. I don't feel loved." I was like, "So what's your reference point?" I said, you must have been loved at some point or felt love at some point. How do you even know?" She's thought about it. She goes, "Well, yeah, I have experienced love." I said, "Well, tell me about it. What was it like?" She starts telling me this amazing encounter and story where this guy really came into her life, and she was at a really low place, and he just showered her with all this love and expressed all these things. And it was very healing for her. She goes, "But then, he's not in my life anymore. And there's no one in my life like that anymore." And she's missing that. She's just longing for that. But as she was telling me about that experience with this guy, her whole demeanor changed. Her whole energy changed. I said, "Wow, you really lit up when you were talking about that experience of being loved." I was like, "Can you actually feel that love?" She's like, "Yeah, I can actually." I said, "Where is it?" I She's like, me, where is it? I was like, where is it in the body? It's like, she's like, I feel it kind of in my chest here. I was like, you actually feel it, right? You're connecting with it. She's like, yeah. I was like, that means it's there. Guy's not here.
But the love is.
I was like, but the love is in you. I said, it was there even when he was there physically showing you all these things. It was in you there too. He was just triggering it. People can trigger it, but it's in here. It's always in here. It's like, if it's in here, it means it's still in there and you can't lose it. You just lost access to it. It's like losing access to your car keys that you have in your pocket, right? It's like, I didn't know they were in my pocket. It's like, no, they were there. Or, a bank account with $1 million in it that maybe you misplaced the debit card or something. That's probably not a great example, but yeah, the idea is like, we have it here. And it was a light bulb for her. I was like, you just need a better blueprint to access it. So I asked her, we had to do some discovery. What does somebody have to do to make you feel loved? And when this wasn't conscious, but once we finally got conscious of it, we listed like 6 or 7 things on this blueprint that she had. And it was all the things this guy did. I said, okay, so most people aren't going to hit those 7 things, right? That you have, that the person has to do to make you feel loved. That's why you feel unloved. I said, well, the blueprint's the problem. Not the fact that you're not loved, is you just got a blueprint that's made it really almost impossible for you ever to access this. So let's just get rid of the blueprint. Let's just pay attention to the love and access the love that you have within you. It's a game changer.
Wow.
Because we have it.
Do you teach people the importance of validating yourself instead of looking to others to validate you?
Oh yeah. The principle of that, and it goes beyond, I'm all for positive affirmations. I think those can help, but experiencing, right? So what is love? What's interesting about love is when let's say you're with somebody and you love them. It's interesting that somebody coined the term falling in love. Somebody paid enough attention to the nature of it that they actually used the word falling. I find that to be fascinating, because why not climbing? Why not running or something? It's just like, no, it's falling. So there's something about the presence of that person that causes us to go, oh, time goes away. Doesn't matter. Whatever I have on my agendas, all this stuff, all that goes away because you're just so enamored with that person, you just let go. And then we experience this bliss, right? This sense of, this is like, it's almost intoxicating, right? It's a sense of love. It's like this, wow, this person. Well, that experience is actually just a symptom. It's a byproduct of letting go. That's all it's happening, is you're just letting go. You're letting that person be whatever they are. So when you're in love with somebody, they may have all these quirks, right? They may have all these issues. It's not a problem at that point, because we're just letting them be exactly the way they are. There's no control, no agenda. Now, eventually, right, the control comes back in. We start to wanting to, and then we lose sight of that bliss, and then we get angry at them because now it's like, what, they took it from us. We don't feel in love anymore. But I always say, when you can learn to let go, the more we can experience our own presence. I know that sounds really weird, but we have a presence. So loneliness, the feeling of loneliness is not, you can be lonely in a relationship, right? You can be with people and feel completely alone.
Oh yeah.
So it's not about proximity, right? Loneliness is an internal. Where do you experience loneliness? It's always inside. Loneliness is a experience of unawareness. The way I like to put it is, all loneliness is unawareness of presence. So that presence is within us. So we have a presence. Most people haven't been taught how to experience our own presence. And by our own, I don't mean that's excluding other people, because think about other people for a moment. You can only experience connection with another person in you. It's not out there. So that presence that you are is also the gateway to connection with everybody else, because that's where the roots of all connection are, is within your own presence. It's amazing. The more I started to experience my own presence, the more connected I felt with everybody else.
Wow.
It's amazing, because that's where the connection is. It's like a beehive, right? So if you go into a beehive, right, you have all those thousands of bees inside the beehive. Our own presence is like that beehive. If you go in there, you'll find connection with everybody, including God and other people. It's all there. That connection's all there. So look, a lot of this work is helping people just let go of their own psychological perception of who they are and the way they should be and the way the world should be. And we just let go of that. We begin to turn inward and experience our own presence. It's subtle. And eventually what ends up happening is people start to feel love for themselves, tremendous value for themselves. They begin to see themselves as a gift, their own life as a gift, because that's the experience. And so love becomes a state of being. It's less attached to an external source. It just becomes our way of being. So everything gets colored through that lens. When we look through the lens of self, everything looks pleasant. Like people, we start to feel, it's amazing when you fall in love with a person, you end up seeing like nobody can really make you mad, right? Because everybody's just like, oh, that's okay. I have grace for everybody. It's like everything's people cut you off in traffic and it's like, oh, okay, they're, I have grace for them because we start to see everything through this lens of love. But in reality, we're just connecting to ourselves. That's all that's happening. And that can be our way of living.
Let's see, that was the one thing I have had the hardest time with is loving myself. And the Bible says you got to get your own house in order before you can help someone else. And I was talking with someone earlier about this. I think at first house is yourself. You got to get things lined up with yourself before you can take care of your own household. That whole thing, if you don't love yourself, how do you expect others to love you? How can you really love someone else if you don't love yourself? That makes sense.
100%. And really in all reality, there's really no one else, because Jesus made this statement. It's really interesting. He was talking, he said, when I was sick, you took care of me. When I was in prison, you visited me. When I was, all of these things. And people were going, well, when did we do this? Like, when were you in prison? When were you sick? When he goes, when you did it for anybody. It's like, you actually did it for me, because in reality, there's no distinction. Once you get beyond the body mind construct, it's just life. It's like if you have two balloons, you can blow up two balloons, right? And you can say the air in one balloon, you can write your name on one balloon, there's Kyle, there's Jamal, and the two balloons, but if you pop the balloon, all that's left is whatever was inside, which is air. Now that you can't say this is my air, this is your air. It's just air.
Mm-hmm.
And that is ultimately the essence. Like, there's just life. We have form, I have my body, you have your body, and we're just different angles of the same life, having these different, I know that's more metaphysical here, and people are like, well, what does that mean? But it's at the end of the day, you start to experience other people as yourself. So even in the Bible, it says, love one another as yourself, not like yourself, but actually as your very self. And this is kind of what Jesus is referring to when he's saying, look, whenever you do anything to anybody, it's really to me, because it's just life, right? They're just expressions of me.
Yeah.
And that's so when we talk about loving self, right? We come back and we say, yeah, there's just me. There's just life. And that we tend to be much bigger than we think, right? In that sense of, well, how big it, well, that's spiritual. Like, we take away the borders, right? Where's the borders of spirit? You can't say it's here and not here. My body has a border for sure. My psychological construct has a border. But when I get to my essence beyond my body and mind, there's really no borders. It includes everything.
So I'm going to ask you a question I've never asked anyone before. Is it possible that you can love yourself today, but then tomorrow you go back to hating yourself again? Is that possible, or or you just never loved yourself in the first place?
Yeah, it's so when the feeling of not loving yourself, right? The feeling of hating yourself. Well, it's actually not the self we're hating.
Mm-hmm.
It's the construct. So yeah, it's totally possible. So what can happen is, in this moment, I may have a moment of clarity, right? A moment of clarity where I'm experiencing the essence of what life is and who I am. And I can feel very loving, very at peace. But if again, this is a practice, right? So living, what's interesting about life is tomorrow's always new, right? When I wake up in the morning, it's a brand new practice at living. So there's patterns. These are called tendencies, right? Some people call it karma, karmic structure. These are just tendencies, right? So we all have them. The tendency, without consciousness, without awareness, what happens is we just go back to tendencies, which are always unconscious. So the next day, maybe the tendencies are, I wake up and I'm used to living in tendencies and not consciousness, then the tendencies take over. And if the tendencies are going to be aligned with my subconscious programming, which says, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I always make mistakes, I'm lazy, I'm horrible, I'm whatever the narrative is. Well, those tendencies will just start running the show, and then we'll feel that way. There's an emotion. So what is an emotion? I like to say emotion this way. Emotion begins with the letter E. E equals energy in motion. So an emotion is simply energy in motion, emotion. That's it. That's all it is. So when I start living by that old script, there's energy there. Mm-hmm. It's just in the body mind level, and it's in motion. I'll start to feel those emotions. And that's an indicator, though. It can be an indicator, say, oh, we lost consciousness of the truth. So when I start suffering and I start feeling bad about myself, I go, oh, I'm feeling who I'm not. I'm feeling the construct. I'm feeling the tendencies. It's okay. No problem. It's just an indicator. It's there to show you, okay, I need to turn inward. I need to learn to experience my essence in this moment. I need to learn to pay attention to who I am in this moment. And then it's a return. That state of ease, of love begins to return. But it's a practice. That's the thing. It's actually, every tradition has like their daily practices. This is why we do the practices. Like for me, I have an entire 21-minute kind of practice that I do every day that just roots me, shifts the gaze inward. I begin to experience my essence and my presence, and then you get free from the tendencies at that point. So it frees you from that. And otherwise, there's only two kinds of behavior. There's conscious behavior, and then there's compulsive behavior. So compulsive behavior is simply behavior that's running according to the tendencies, right? The tendencies are just running the script. So I don't even think about it. I just do it. So if my tendency is to feel bad about myself, that's what I'll do. But if I get conscious, if I bring awareness into it, then it shifts. Then I may still have the tendencies, but I see them. And when you see them, you're not controlled by them. It's only when we don't see it, we're not conscious of it, that it starts to run the script, so to speak.
So, and my understanding of it is that it's not so much that you fall off, it's that you get back up and you go back to where you want to be.
100%.
Because it's going to happen. Yeah, it's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
Don't give up.
Yeah. It's just living, it's just a part of living. It's like, if we look at a child who's learning to walk, they're going to fall. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't say to that child, oh, you're making a mistake, right? When a baby's like learning to crawl and walk and they're wobbly and they're stumbling, like it's not about doing it right or wrong. They're not doing it wrong. They're just learning. It's the process, right? It's the same thing with us, right? It's a process. The human experience is a process of waking up to the truth, my understanding, the truth of who we are. And so that involves struggle. It involves being aware of certain tendencies and becoming conscious, and it's part of our path. So it's not even about making a mistake or doing it wrong. It's just we get conscious. It's all learning.
Yeah. Well, and you're going to have somebody out there that says, well, that's so simple. I knew that. Well, yeah, most people do, but there's always those folks out there that they get discouraged pretty easily, and they think, oh, well, I screwed up, so I'm not going to be able to do this. It's persistence. A football player gets to be good because he practices. Basketball player, baseball player. You just keep practicing.
And when we're aware that we're actually, so one of the things that can be really debilitating for people is when they feel like they're not good enough or they're not measuring up. So then it becomes they're trying to prove it, right? Trying to prove the point. See, I'm measuring up here. But if that wasn't a question, like if you just knew, no, I'm fine, doesn't mean we're not growing or we don't have a need to improve. It just means, no, I'm okay. then that takes the stress off, the pressure off. So like there's a passage from the Bible that Jesus says, he said, be perfect because God is perfect, right? And people read that and go, well, there's no way I can be perfect. How am I supposed to? Perfection is not even possible. And the reason it feels impossible is because we read it as do, performance, right? You got to perform. But actually, he says just be perfect because God is perfect. So God is the standard. It's always what does God have to do to be perfect? Let's just use that. What does God need to do? Depending, no matter what your spiritual background or what you believe, just like the idea of God, right? This perfect being. What does God have to do? Nothing. Just be.
Exactly.
So the word is be perfect. So the key to actual perfection is just being. So it's not do perfect. It's just be. So I live up in the mountains and we got beautiful trees where I live, and I go for a walk, and I love trees. I've never seen an imperfect tree. I don't look at it that way. I go, that's different shapes and sizes doing, but it's trees being what it is. Perfect. The sun, it's being what it is. It's perfect.
Drives me crazy is all those times I could see somebody else and say, yeah, they deserve it, but I would never say that about myself. I know a lot of people feel that way, and my way of thinking's changing, but I don't want to be the arrogant person either. You know? But
sure. Well, think about the ego, right?
Yeah.
Well, see, I'm glad you brought that up, because so the ego, when people, brag and they say, man, I'm the greatest, I'm all that, that can be coming from ego. But the difference is the ego doesn't actually believe it. The ego wants to believe it. That's why it rises up. It's trying to prove it. So it becomes this kind of show. It's trying to show everybody, look how great I am, because it actually is terrified. That construct is terrified of not being good enough. But when you go beyond that egoic construct and you just recognize the perfection of just life itself, there's no need to prove it. It's just an awareness, inner awareness, and that stress is gone. That pressure is gone, because I'm okay. This is okay. And then you can flourish. You can actually blossom. I mean, you think about a flower, it's like, it's going to blossom. It doesn't have to, regardless of what somebody thinks or doesn't think, or maybe somebody doesn't notice it. It's okay. It's going to blossom because that's what life does, just naturally.
We have to give ourselves room to make mistakes. I don't know why we feel this overwhelming need to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
You can't, be perfect, but
but you can't, it's not a performance. It's just a being. But when we're told that it is performance based, that brings in the fear of not measuring up, because now I may not perform well. And then, now I'm less than what I can. But if that's not even a possibility, if it's not even a possibility, if your existence itself is perfect, then we're just here to have life, to experience life to the fullest. That's it. And that's when we really begin to, life becomes this gift. And we begin, it's like a child, children play, it's natural for children to go out and play, but why are they playing? Why are they having fun? Why are they experiencing it? It's not to prove anything. It's not to be somebody. That comes later, right? In the psychological construct. Right. The very natural part of life is just they're here to experience this and to live it to the fullest. And we can actually live that way when there's nothing on the line, when we know that in this moment, what we need, we have, we're loved, we're sufficient. So what's the point of living? To have the experience, right? To have the full experience.
That's right. Man, I feel better already.
It's a gift, this thing.
Do you have a website?
I do. So my website is just my name, my first and last name, JamalJivanjee.com. And that's the best place where people can go. And I have I have a coaching page, my podcast, and then the book I have, it's all linked there on the website. So it's probably the best place. I'm also on social media, but all those links are there on the website as well. So kind of the one-stop hub. Are
you just audio as far as podcast, or you do video as well?
Just audio. I've just recently started uploading my podcast to YouTube, but it's just audio, so there's no video there.
But the YouTube link, everything is on the website.
Yep, all that's
Sweet.
there.
I'll put that link in the description so people can click on it and go to it. And I'm assuming you can buy your book from there as well.
Yeah. So the link, the Amazon, it's you can probably the best place to get it is through Amazon, but that link to that is on the website. Yeah.
Okay, awesome, man. Jamal, I appreciate you coming on today and giving me your time. And I always take something away from everyone that comes to my show, and definitely did that for me today.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me, and thank you again. Like I said, thank you for creating the show. These conversations are so important for people to have. I've seen the fruit of them, so I appreciate you creating this show.
Well, I mentioned myself because I'm the best example I can give. I don't like to give anybody else's, but there's somebody else out there that has gone through the same things that I have, and that's why I mention it. I want people to know there's someone that knows how you feel. You can change your life in so many ways. Some of us we need help to do it.
Oh, sure.
It's just taking that step to do it. And don't go around hating yourself. If somebody else is worthy, why can't you be worthy?
That's right. Beautiful.
But with that, I must say this is the end. And to all of you out there, if you are new to the channel, I thank you for stopping by. Hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. For those of you who are regular, I surely appreciate your support. Without you, I just couldn't do this. And until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network